So, Barbara, I think I've identified a fundamental flaw in all of your thinking.
Oh my, bring it.
Yeah, okay. Now, I'm saying this with a smirk. I mean, obviously I haven't done that, but however, it's something it's been concerning me for a while. So, everything that you're describing requires a degree of thoughtful engagement and analysis. It requires deep thinking. Requires slowing down a bit to engage more fully. It requires a lot of things in our minds to think through situations. And yet, this technology, both AI technology and just other technology enablement, I fear is actually making us stupider. We are less likely to be able to do that deep thinking. Welcome to Leadership Disrupted. Barbara Wittmann is the founder of the Digital Wisdom Collective, an operating system for the age of AI and transformation that upgrades how organizations design, collaborate, and deliver. It builds two interconnected layers of infrastructure to make your tech stack shine. The human infrastructure, including confidence, collaboration, connectors in the middle, shared mental models, and an innovation mindset that keeps ecosystems growing, plus the navigation infrastructure, shared orientation tools that guide decision-making without adding more technology, bringing clarity into the complexity. Digital leadership today requires so much more than facility with just digital technology. And Barbara is the perfect person to talk about the opportunities, the nuances, the potential trapdoors that face leaders who are driving technology, innovation, and change. And in today's AI-driven world, one way or the other, that means all of us. So, Barbara Wittmann, welcome to Leadership Disrupted. We're thrilled to have you here. And I'd like to start with just asking you, what other, I guess, aspects of your background, your history, your experience, would you like to share with us initially to kind of kickstart the conversation?
All right. Well, glad to be here, Dan. Thanks for having me as a guest. What other aspects of my history? Wow.
Well, let's start with Munich. Let's start with
Yeah.
your geographical background.
Right.
You've been in the U.S. how many years?
I've been here for 10 years. So
10
I
years in the U.S. Okay.
was born and raised close to Munich, Germany. And what I thought initially as being a total disadvantage to me when I was growing up actually turns out to be a huge asset, because I grew up in a very small village. And Americans think of small of like 10,000 people. For me, it was 7 houses. Okay, so small is small. But, we were our own little ecosystem in itself. Different generations, different trades, different stories. So we had to get along because, everyone was dependent on the other. So in a way that has deeply ingrained itself in my DNA. And what I started realizing going forward in my career is that this ecosystem of a village is really what makes project teams, companies, startups, you name it, what makes it click.
Well, how does that, and that, of course, that makes sense, but how does that get lost? It seems so sensible, and yet I guess, in the complexity of technology, I don't know, somehow we lose sight of that and then get convinced it's about the technology.
Mhm. Because we have come to believe that tall fences make good neighbors.
I suppose it depends on who your neighbors are, but yes.
Who your neighbors are, and that's exactly what kills it, is the silo thinking. It's like, okay, so I have the hot potato, I'm going to throw it into the next neighbor's yard. So the entire thought of fence and ownership is great because we are drawing boundaries. but it is also muddying the waters because it makes things so much slower. And on top of that, it's a very simple thing, and that's the human ego, right? Because we are proud people, and we just want to defend our ideas, which is great. But if you are working in a bigger picture, in the sense of collective intelligence that's getting together, sometimes that is stopping the fun.
It's also true, at least I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it's true that technology in general has tended to attract employees, more so men than women, and tended to attract employees who maybe aren't the strongest in terms of their relational skills or their people skills. So when you have a wave of employees drawn to technology who are more about the tech than about the relationships, I think that starts to craft or create a culture of, hey, we'll focus on the tech and maybe miss out on the other half of the equation. Am I understanding that right?
That's the common belief, and it's a yes and. I mean, I can tell you that I was really the odd one out when I started working at SAP, because I was not coming in from a tech background. In fact, I didn't even have a university degree. So I somehow slipped in through the side door, and I was one of the 3% without, like a higher degree. And I was looking at things very differently. I couldn't code or anything. And of course, I was, people were like, what are you doing here? But I could talk to people. And, I could connect the dots. And I really think that we believe that technology only has to do with the bits and bytes and the zeros and ones, and that is not true. So we are, even there, we're boxing people in, right? Technology companies are hiring for a skill set that is very refined to what they need. But at this point, we need to look at a more diverse picture of things. So I spent the bigger part of my career feeling like an imposter.
And you've had a fair number of experiences where something was broken, either a system or a process or a project or some kind of technology initiative completely derailed and broken, and then you have come in and I'll use the word you fixed. You have come in and you have fixed those broken initiatives. Any particular one of those experiences that jumps out at you that you could share with us that kind of gives us a good kind of picture of the experiences that you've gone through?
Right. So I think one of the most difficult, but also the most rewarding ones, I worked a lot with large retailers. So back then, still in Europe, a retailer there who had a system implemented, and that was a long time ago. It was like super innovative back then. With the scanning devices, you would take on your shopping cart and you would scan everything, and then the checkout would be super easy.
Yeah.
And the devices just would crash in peak hours, and they could not figure out what to do. So they started adding a different kind of device, and they were just throwing spaghetti at the wall to kind of see, oh my god, what is going to fix it. So I came in and I basically pieced it all apart and said, okay, so what do we need to do? And essentially, I don't really have to bring in deep technology knowledge. It's more of a puzzle layout. Who do we have in people? And of course, you get a little bit more of the nerdy kind that's like, ooh, but I'm very talented here, right? But then you just need to find the right place for them. So I was basically the orchestrator, like you were saying in our pre-talk. So orchestrating to put people into the right spots and really figure out what to fix first, and also keep the stakeholders at bay, right? Board was very angry. They're like, we sunk so much money into this, we got to stop it. And over a time period of 6 months, we got it all figured out, and we figured out how to scale it. Customers were happy again. And we also grew together as a team. You know, the nerdy
Mhm.
developer that was so singularly minded, all of a sudden he started talking in meetings, and he was like, I got an idea, and everyone was like, whoa, you know. Wait, what? But you know, you also have to start thinking a little bit outside of the box, um, and bring in fun things to reward and get the team spirit going. So what I started doing is I got a big pink elephant balloon, and whoever, you know, didn't want to speak up about something that was very apparent, that person had to walk with that pink elephant balloon all around the building. And you know, it it was a way to get people to talk, right?
Mhm.
But it worked, you know. And everyone was like, oh my god, you know, that is so stupid. But then they did it once, and they, by the time they came back, they had to laugh. And yeah, that was that. So, you know, let's not take things so damn serious. Yeah.
What have you had any failures or close to failures where no, even though you tried all of the human techniques, um, you just weren't able to bring a team together?
I have, yeah. And those are the ones that I'm, you know, still chewing on today, because those are really hard to digest. You know, projects that were just too complex in scale, where I was missing out on some pieces, and then things went live, and everything was at a standstill for 2 weeks because one small bit was missing, and I missed it. So, you know, you can beat yourself up forever, or it's like, well, you know, it was a joint effort, so you know, we all dropped the ball.
Mhm.
um so that, you know, in these moments, it's always a growing and learning experience for me too. And what I have found is, the more I learn about me as a person, and the more I look at my blind spots, the better I get at my job. And that to me is the core thing that I now turn around and teach.
For sure. I do think one of the reasons that agile project management works so well in the tech space is because a lot of the technology solutions, the end-to-end solutions, are so incredibly complicated with so many layers that it's almost not possible to fully plan something out from 0 to 100 and have it work perfectly. And so with agile, you develop, but then you iterate. You create a minimum viable product, you launch and learn, and then move forward, learn, and move forward and learn, and you iterate phase after phase after phase, because there is no person or no team that has the full comprehensive knowledge necessary to start with a blank page and say, here's how we're gonna build this out, beginning to end, and it will 6 months from now it will launch perfectly, no issues or challenges. Um, and if anything, technology solutions have become even more complex, particularly in the age of AI. But let me ask you, like, what kind of conversations are you having today about, whether it's about AI or other technology initiatives? What kind of conversations typically come to you from clients or prospective clients or employers?
Can I say something to your
Sure. Oh,
agile
of course.
theory first? Sorry.
Yes. And if
Yeah.
and if you disagree, that's perfectly fine. I say lots of things that are
No, agile is a beautiful thing, but I've also have it seen go really wrong. So I think it's also an illusion, right? And that's why we as humans, we go from one extreme to the other. Here before, we were planning everything out to the T. That's my German side of things,
Mhm.
right? Um, and then we go agile, and it's like, yo, you know, let's just invent something. it can really backfire because it also needs to latch on to a company culture, and agile is also an internal mindset thing, right? So I've seen it go terribly wrong when an implementation partner comes in and says, oh, we're doing everything agile, and then you have no cost control and nothing because the goalpost keeps changing. It also goes wrong if you don't have like a set frame of where we want to shoot to, how does that fit into the company strategy? So I still think there needs to be some embedding of agile in an overall company, and a lot of companies I've seen have missed that to some
Yes.
extent.
I've
Yeah.
spoken with many of our clients who have struggled with agile implementation because they launch agile for a group and for a project or a series of projects, and it works relatively well. And then someone decides we should all be agile. So then
Yeah.
and then they attempt to implement or apply the same methodologies to initiatives that where it's really not the best way to move forward,
Yeah.
or without, if you don't have a cohesive vision, if you think in art terms, for example, your artwork can look like Jackson Pollock. Take Jackson Pollock as a painter. There's something about a Jackson Pollock painting, even though he's just splattering ink. There's something about it that says there's a vision there that I can feel it. Maybe I don't see it, but I can feel it. You take any one of us can splatter paint. You take me and you have me splatter paint, it just looks like paint splatter. It's just a lot of messy splatter. So if you don't have that vision underlying what you're trying to do, agile can just be a series of messy experiments that never get you anywhere.
Right. Sorry, bit of a detour.
So would you say the majority of your conversations with people today revolve around various topics related to AI, or do you have a lot of non-AI initiatives as well?
So AI is definitely something that's the big buzzword around, and it's for IT leaders and head of IT, it's a thorn in their thigh because it's one problem they have, but it's just one, right? It's not top of mind. So the biggest conversations I'm having around AI is expectation management, right? How do we debunk assumptions? Because how it usually happens is the board comes in and says a little bit fear of missing out, right?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, guys, we got to do something with AI to figure
Because
something.
because it should, without any context at all, it should improve efficiency by 30%, so we can eliminate 200 jobs. So get going.
Yeah, exactly. And all of a sudden, they have like a new budget that magically appears, right? And they say, hey, here you have it. Make a proof of concept. So what I have seen, and it doesn't need to match every company out there, so that is thrown into the yard of the IT guy. Village, fences, right?
Absolutely.
He says, hey, I got to see how that fits into my database structure and all, and which is a very smart thing, right? And then the board says, oh, there he is again, the party pooper. Takes it, throws it into the next yard. Maybe the strategy guy. The strategy guy is like, oh, yay, I'm going to do something with it, right? And then he built some unicorn that is a little happy island, shows it to the board. And then it goes back to the IT guy who says, yeah, that doesn't work in real life. And then we have it. And then the whole mess starts, right? Let alone that people are scared through the board because they're like, wait, what? Are we going to get laid off now? And how is that working? So I think people are looking at AI at at the wrong level, right? So AI is a beautiful thing and it can help and do amazing things, but I would start with productivity gains and really educate the people to how to ask better questions, first of all, right? Because we are really bad at asking questions. And to really explore how it can be a co-creation buddy, and how it can make us faster and better, and how it can save us time. Because what every company is struggling with right now is that the core people pushing digital initiative, and getting them over the finish line, they are short-handed in that department. The core people are overloaded. So I would use AI to find ways to take load off, right? And really let them shine in what they are super good at and not drown in just too many tasks.
Man, when you say take load off, that just goes completely against the grain of what I hear more frequently, which is AI can improve efficiencies by 30%. I can get 30% more out of every one of those humans. So they're not, I don't mean everyone, but many leaders are not thinking, how do we use AI to reduce the burden on our
Yeah.
employees? How do we use AI to improve job satisfaction? How do we use AI to give them more mental space for innovation and creativity, to take a breath
Yeah.
and think more deeply, while AI is doing a great job with some of the lighter work, some of the more mundane work. I know that for myself, I have a team of creative instructional designers, and initially, and this is my own error in terms of my learning journey. Initially, I was thinking, wow, we can leverage AI to enhance the instructional design of all of our courses, because every one of our courses is on a refresh cycle. About every 3 years, the course comes up to be refreshed.
Yeah.
And so my thinking was, if you train an AI agent in good instructional design principles, and then you make sure it's current and leverages current language, you can take a 5-year-old course and ask AI to re-engineer it with more modern instructional design. It just ended up being too much. What AI produced was a mess, like a Salvador Dali painting. It was a mess. And so we backed up to say to our instructional designers, oh, well, and I mean, what it also did is it stripped away the pride of the instructional designer. If the instructional designer is just uploading content and then reviewing the output and maybe making a few adjustments, that is not why any of them got into this kind of role. They got into this kind of role to create, to take pride in their work. And so now, after this has been a full year of hard learning. Now they use a variety of AI tools as scalpels, very carefully, surgically refreshing, as opposed to thinking AI is going to do a massive complete rewrite for them.
Right. But here's the thing. We as humans are linear thinkers. So the pendulum swings, right?
Yeah.
It's either everything is done by human, or now AI can do everything, right? But if we want to do it sustainably, we need to start learning to think circular again. So what does that mean? And that's a big piece of my framework that I teach people. We need to be better at defining what the issue is. So, because what you just described is, you thought you understood the problem with a ton of assumptions in there, and then you dumped it into AI, right? And that's also why a ton of projects fail, by the way, a lot of technology projects, because we don't take the time to understand the problem space. and really align properly. And that's something we were conditioned to, because we jump into solution right away. It's like, ooh, I've done this before. Oh yeah, I know how it works. So we need to stop and think about what the problem is, really define that, hone that down, hear all the voices, and then start synthesizing it, and everything we've heard, bring it into a storyline, come up with a solution, implement it. And we cannot jump over the cycles. We always need to go back through it, even if a change happens. So our linear thinking gets us into trouble. And our linear thinking makes us build higher fences. So when we talk about AI, at the end of the day, it is a problem of assumptions not being debunked, and a problem of mindset of the individual people using it, and really allowing it to be a co-creation helper.
So is it possible that one of the root contributors to what you just described is when leaders who have digital responsibilities or just digital ideas don't know the fundamentals of the underlying work which they are attempting to digitize or which they are attempting
Yes.
to AIize. And so if you are not close enough to the work, which I think unfortunately that's also a trend in the last several decades, where you have managers and leaders, they don't want to micromanage. They want to, quote, hire smart people and let smart people do their work, which I agree with. And yet there is a fundamental requirement. A good leader needs to know how, not just what work needs to be done, but how the work is being done. Because if a leader from 5,000 or 10,000 feet just says, hey, we're going to digitize this, we're going to apply AI to this, that leader is not going to have the context to do what you just described, to really understand what business problems are we looking to solve, and then help guide that transition. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense, because what's happening right now is you just delegate complexity.
Yes. And now we're coming off of decades of delegating complexity.
Yeah.
Well, that's too hard for me to think through. I'm going to hire someone. I'm going to hire someone, quote, smarter than I, and I will get rewarded and celebrated because I hire smart people, which is,
and that's okay, right?
That is a good thing. That is a good thing.
That's totally okay. But from a top level, the complexity keeps getting more, and they kick it down the road, and then it lands in the middle of the organization, the execution layer. That's the place where you cannot delegate any longer, and they need to do something with it.
Yes.
But we have forgotten to empower them to speak up if they see stuff happening way down the road, right? So what happens with these guys in the middle, they are the worker bees, and they know how things are connected, and they could tell you straight away that what you just started as a project or something is not going anywhere. But they are tired.
Yeah.
They are overworked, and they said, well, I tried to say something at some point, but no one listened to me, so now I just shut up.
And depending on how you have treated them the last 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, they are going to either care or not care so much. They may see the train going down the track and see this thing is going to crash. I can see it happening. If you want employees to step in to say, let me help you stop this train before it crashes, that requires a certain kind of human leadership, not digital leadership. And so I can imagine, how do you, like the job that you're describing, taking a project and pulling it together both from the tech standpoint and the human standpoint, there've got to be lots of layers and subtleties to that kind of project management.
But what I did, and what a lot of consultants do for that matter, is they give the middle layer people a voice. But they know what to do. They have all the ideas, they have all the solutions. They just don't have, the empowerment to really step it up and say, hey, but I know how to fix this. And for the most part, that's a mix of IT and also business people. The business people think, well, I have no business in fiddling in that whole IT stuff, but they are dealing with the processes each day, so they know. So what happens if you train exactly that layer of people, it is pretty magical. Because what you have is somebody who can honestly say, yes, that's a great idea, or hey, if we send that initiative out, we're going to be better off. And you save money. You save time, you save money, you save yourself a lot of heartache. So it is an interesting thing. We worked with companies that have saved up to 20% of the consulting spend. I mean, I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot here because I'm eliminating me, but it's the sustainable way.
If I had to do over again, just in my little example, I would have empowered I'll call them the middle layer, the actual instructional designers. I would have empowered them to access the tools, play with them for a while, and then come to me with a vision for how would you practically use these in your workflow to produce better, faster work. What I did instead was exactly what you described. I'm the poster boy for bad thinking. I thought I knew the end-to-end process that they went through, and I was pretty sure that I knew all the nuances, but I don't. I was an instructional designer 20 years ago, so I'm 20 years removed from the way they do their work, and so much has changed in 20 years that I don't need to know about, or at least I didn't know about, and I made huge assumptions in terms of how AI could be leveraged. We created an Uber prompt, like a huge super prompt, very long, that would cover every aspect of instructional design. It was in the end just an over-engineered, non-effective process. Exactly what you're describing. I also heard you mentioned employees getting somewhat concerned or paranoid. I know of one organization where that was a video production house, and there was an edict from the top down. We will start using AI video generation in our projects, which should reduce our cycle time by 30%, should reduce costs by well over 30%. And from this day forward, they mentioned a day, at least 50% of our projects should be AI generated. And they wanted metrics, et cetera, et cetera. Well, without going into detail regarding the nature of their projects, the actual video producers were trying and were struggling to get the level of quality that they needed. And they began creating human created video and passing it off as AI generated, because the edict was by this date, 50% has to be AI generated. So they were simply calling things AI generated.
Yeah.
They were fearful for their own jobs. So working late at night, working early mornings, creating these videos, posting metrics regarding cost savings and time savings that weren't real, all the while hoping that they would come to master the video technology, the AI technology, to a point where what they were claiming to be real could ultimately be real. I don't know the end of that story. I just heard that story when they were in the midst of all the pain of it. But I realized leaders put so much pressure on their employees sometimes because they have a vision, they have a big picture vision, but not that middle level understanding of how the work really gets done. I'm sure you see a lot of that.
Oh, absolutely. And I can also tell you that there's a lot of efficiency gains in companies that have nothing to do with AI, that everyone in the middle layer has in their head. It would be, you know, a simple process change or something, but it is disregarded because it's not sexy,
Yeah.
right? So we're always shooting for the next big thing, the next cool gadget, you know, and no doubt AI will totally change and revolutionize the world. But we got to be a little bit careful also as company owners. How are we harvesting innovation potential? So last year, I was stepping in as an interim CIO for a company. So I had a lot of initiatives on my table that I had to go through that were dubbed AI. But then when you were digging into this, I was finding that it wasn't really, I mean, AI is not going to fix the root cause. So again, how are we looking at really figuring out the root cause and the real problem? Because we can cover up a lot of organizational things, strategic things, just by plopping AI on top and collecting even more data that we haven't figured out how to use in the first place. So that to me is a huge concern. The other piece is AI is going to be a huge differentiator for every business. When you keep pulling in external consultancies, they will sell you the low-hanging fruit that they sell to everyone. So where's your edge? There's no differentiation. So your real edge is going to come from innovation from within. So how do you empower the people that see everything, again, the middle layer, to be that innovator? It doesn't mean that you cut out consultants forever, because you will always need an impulse. But you will only need them to get things rolling. And then you internalize these things. But that means you need to work on breaking down silos. And you also need to implement a new mindset for people. And that to me is the biggest crux, because AI is changing the possibilities. So we need to start looking at things through a different lens. If we as people look at AI possibilities with the limitations that we know, we just do the same thing, just in a different way. So what needs to be looked at is it really, to me, it's a self-development piece. It really is a self-development piece for what I call ecosystem stewards in the middle layer. And they need to be willing to really look at themselves and say, oh, right, you know, I have these limiting beliefs, and I really need to rewire them, because I always thought I can't talk to the designers, they're stupid, right? They don't bring anything. Or the general thing would be, we've always done it this way. We've looked at this before, it doesn't really do anything, you know? So you need somebody who has their ego in check, and who's good at listening, and who can stand in a room and facilitate a workshop without getting the own buttons pushed.
Which is easy to say. That's a very, very much a learned skill, that to be able to truly not have a dog in any fight, not to care but not care, to be engaged but not so engaged that you end up having blind spots. How
It's a
do your
lifelong process. Yeah.
agreed. So when someone reaches out to you and they have a particular situation,
Mhm.
how do those conversations usually start? Like what? Yeah, I guess that's my question. Like how does somebody typically engage with you? Do they come to you with a problem? Do they come to you with a project that's off the rails? Do they come to you with a vision but no execution? How does it
Mhm.
typically arrive on your doorstep?
So unfortunately, in our world, it always starts with a problem that's hot and pressing, right? Because companies are not really keen on investing proactively into things.
Mhm.
So there's always got to be some sort of crisis, or some, event that would prompt for more alignment. So usually I would start with a conversation and really see where the biggest pain point is. And at this point, I'm trying not to fully immerse myself into the operational piece anymore. But I would say, hey, here's a couple of things we can do. So I would usually start with a workshop that before I go into the workshop, we have an assessment tool that we use, a digital wisdom maturity assessment, where we can actually see where is the biggest thing we need to tackle. And again, we don't come in with the next software tool or something. We really come in with, small, what we call orientation tools or empowerment of people. So usually the tool that I would start using is I would create a map. And we both remember the times when we wanted to go places in our car, big road trip. You would have a physical map that you unfold on the hood of the car, and you could show everyone in the car, we are here, this is where we want to go. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, and unfortunately right now with navigation systems in place, we're losing our orientation. So the first thing I would usually create is several maps that help to communicate, visuals, right? How is data connected? How are the stakeholders connected? How are systems and main functions connected? That is just something everyone can refer to and say, this is what we talk about now. Other pieces that are getting neglected is a common value structure. And if I have common values, and we usually land on 3, you can derive what is important in our collaboration, how do we make decisions, very basic things. We also would implement a repeating pattern. Once we have defined a certain baseline, be it value or a goal definition, we would teach them to pull this up every meeting. Repeating is how we learn. Repeating is how we remember. So, always in every meeting start with the same slide and, hey, this is our ground rules and this is our visual on we are here, right? Like in the shopping mall, you can get lost. So very simple things to start better alignment. And then we would train, the top people, but not within the organization. We actually take them out. And take them out doesn't mean they're like away for months at a time or something. Time invest is 3 to 5 hours per month. But we give them a safe space and playground. It was a cross-industry group where they can talk about the issues they have, find common solutions, train the problem definition model, the circular thinking, and they can try themselves out as a leader. They can practice speaking up. So we basically take them out of their echo chamber and they can train a muscle. And they can bring it right back into their own work. So what I have found is if you just drop new knowledge onto people, it is without context. You need to start creating spaces where they can actually try it out and weave it in. Like with the software, we upgrade, we test, right? We test before we go live. We don't do that with people knowledge upgrades.
The language that I use for what you're describing is sometimes people are so caught up in the project that they're not working on the project. Like if you're in the project and you're trying to do training and development and change while you're in the project itself, it can be very challenging because people are caught up in their own mindset, their own workflow, their own limitations, their biases. Whereas if you, I love as you describe it, setting aside a space to work
Mm.
on the project. You'll still do the project work. You'll still be in the project eventually, but setting aside some time and space to think about working on the project and making those adjustments, I think that's genius.
Right.
That makes a huge amount of sense.
And giving people a safe space where they can just show up and bring their questions that they would usually deem stupid, right? Something you cannot ask your, heavy hitter consultant in-house or your developer in-house or something. And, no shame, no blame. And basically what they see is everyone cooks with water, no one is above anything. And regardless of what position people hold in the organization, they all have bits and pieces to the solution. So what we show them is basically that you need to hear different voices, different shades. So what they start doing is they go back in their organization, they start asking people they've never asked before. That's how you break down
Yeah.
the fences, right?
As you describe it, I imagine, because you kind of quickly went past that mapping process. I imagine taking the time to first do a data map, like what data is captured, where is it housed, how does it flow, then looking at what was the next? It was a stakeholders map, looking at the various stakeholders, who's accountable, who's interested, who's responsible, who's a contributor, who might be a resistor, but really thinking through the various stakeholders. I have to imagine, like, mapping that out plus the systems and the main functions. Does it ever happen where once you have these maps, the challenge sort of reveals itself to you, that there's a mismatch between data and systems, or a mismatch between stakeholders and how the functions are structured, or whatever that might be?
And it doesn't just reveal itself to me. It's more like it's the aha for everyone. It's like, oh man, now we understand, right?
Yeah.
So it really is. But again, that's what at this point I'm trying to avoid, that I'm the fixer. I want to create a system that fixes itself, right? So I give people the tools, and I don't have any stake in upgrading these maps as they are changing, because people in the organization will be able to maintain those because they see the value, right? If they have used it, if they have had an aha moment, they will keep these things updated. And it doesn't take away from any other documentation that already exists in the organization. But again, we go in extremes, right? We document every minute thing, and we have like the process documentation. One of my clients has over 2,000 processes documented, and no one looks at it because they don't see the forest for the trees.
Given all of this experience that you have, given the change initiatives that you've been able to drive and fix, if you were just talking to a generic leader today who has some degree of responsibility over digital projects, whatever they might be, are there any universal guidances, rules, best practices, particularly in the age of AI? If you're talking to, I think virtually every leader finds themselves being impacted by AI, either reactively or they're trying to do it proactively.
Yeah.
Are there any guidances that come to you that you would, I guess, practices that you would just recommend for virtually any leader?
I would say talk to your peers. Start introducing a peer roundtable of sorts where a strategy is really laid out and discussed from different angles. And sometimes we also come in and facilitate these things. But these days, the alignment of the different perspective is the most important piece, and really getting the assumptions that everyone has in their heads out on the table. And
Easy words to say, and I know you know this. it's so common for things to be left unsaid, either because we assume everyone thinks the way that we do. So what's the point of saying it? Or we don't say it because we don't want to reveal that others don't think the way we do.
Right,
Um,
right.
and honestly, that's probably a best business practice for almost any problem-solving situation, is to start with transparent, open communication. Get what's in your head out onto the
Mhm.
table.
And it's hard to force it, right? So what we have, and that sometimes is our starter workshop, we call it Mindset Before Machines. And we come in with an AI example, and it's basically um, it's an example you play through, right?
Mhm.
Um, the interesting piece is that you start with the prompt of we need to do more AI, and then once you hash through the entire exercise, which is a 2-hour workshop, you have never talked about AI at the end, and the
Uh-huh.
solution is not AI. Um, and it's just it's an example they play through, but it really opens the minds of people to say, "Wow, I wonder what all we have not talked about." Um, so if we can kind of jumpstart that a little bit with a workshop like that, that's amazing, you know. Um, but yes, we need to learn to have more open communication, and especially across different functions, right? You cannot do a business
Barbara,
strategy without. So you cannot have a business strategy without matching up the IT strategy, right?
mhm.
And you cannot have a business strategy without a data strategy. Um, so I would say align your views, and then before you jump into any new thing that you sink a ton of money in, look at the bigger picture and really see what is it going to bring me. Because sometimes less is more, you know. We are so in the mindset of, but we got to have more, more, more. It may be wise to start with a small AI initiative and start a bigger initiative where you actually clean up your data, because your data is feeding what technology is going to do.
So, Barbara, I think I've identified a fundamental flaw in all of your thinking.
Oh my, bring it.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm saying this with a smirk. I mean, obviously I haven't done that, but however, it's something it's been concerning me for a while. So everything that you're describing requires a degree of thoughtful engagement and analysis. It requires deep thinking,
Mhm,
requires slowing down a bit
mhm,
to engage more fully. It requires a lot of things in our minds to think through situations. And yet, this technology, um, both AI technology and just other technology enablement, I fear is actually making us stupider. We are less likely to be able to do that deep thinking. Let's use just your analogy of the maps. I think, of course, you're correct. When I was growing up, I was a Boy Scout. I got my orienteering merit badge. I learned to read a compass. I learned to read a map. I learned
mhm,
to look at the a map's uh, information and be able to uh, assess distances and directions. All of those things. Now today, I simply follow Google Maps online, and that's
Yep.
it. And now, because I think I have muscle memory of what that used to be like, I probably have a certain sense of direction. But
Mhm,
my children, if you put them in the middle of open country, they would have no idea which direction is north.
mhm,
They would not know. If they just wouldn't know what to do. You could give them a map. You could give them a map, and I don't know that they would know what to do with it. And that's just one example. I think AI, the danger is, if we let AI do the hard thinking for us, our mental muscles start to atrophy. Um, and yet, and yet, we are needed. So I called it the fundamental flaw. It may not be the fundamental flaw. It may be, what's the right word? Irony. It may be like we need humans more than ever to do the
Yeah.
deep thinking, to guide the leveraging of technology. And I know this isn't fair. I just sprung this question on you, but because you're someone who
Um,
thinks so deeply about technology and about AI, does that prompt any thoughts from you?
so first of all, I would like to draw a brighter picture, right? And you're totally right. It's muscle memory, right? That's why we need to start training the deeply human abilities, and that is listening, collaboration, um, some level of emotional intelligence. But again, we need to give training spaces where these things can be tried out, and we cannot look at upgrading humans anymore as a one and done exercise. It's an
Mm-hmm.
ongoing cycle. So what we do is a dual ecosystem approach. You come into our groups, you get trained as a leader, you go back into your environment, and you start building your own ecosystem. But you keep in the upgrade loop. So you keep in our ecosystem where you find like-minded people that keep encouraging you that what you're doing is great, and you keep upgrading, right? You keep practicing. So that is one super important piece. The other thing is we need to stop looking at the loudest voices in the company. We need to start looking at the quiet ones, because the quiet ones are the ones who hold the capability that we can build on. You know, that everyone has someone in the company who really doesn't have a lot of airtime in meetings, but everyone goes to them when they need advice.
And oftentimes, those are, as we were discussing earlier, the deeper thinkers. They're the observers. They're watching what works, what doesn't work, and they would rather give their advice quietly, um,
Yeah.
as opposed to standing up in front of a room. And they often don't want credit. They just want to know that it's being fixed or addressed, whatever it might be. That so I'm in fact I'm writing that down right now. Listen to the quiet ones. I think it's great advice for all of us.
And we need to empower them. I think that's also a different lens HR needs to take. You know, who are the high potentials?
Mm-hmm.
It may not be the very loud ones anymore going forward, because we need system thinkers, we need collaborators, we need trusted sources, and we need to strengthen those. Also, we have to step away from thinking that everyone in the company needs to be like that. That's never going to happen. But you need to have a certain number of people who can go and talk to people, who can start connecting the dots,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, so in your middle layer management, you need about 25% of people who are thinking differently, who are open-minded, and that's when you start having ripple effect from the middle out.
Mm-hmm.
That's in my mind the most sustainable way for change. So that to me are the core pieces. The other thing is we need to fix the human to human connection before we turn to the human to machine, because we are really bad at, delegating tasks, asking good questions,
Mm-hmm.
because we assume things. We have institutional knowledge. If I work with you for 5 years and I turn to you and say, oh, take over project XYZ, you will know what to do. If I punch the same thing into an AI, it will not know what to do.
But we've lost some of that human to human skill of having someone turn over a project, for example. There are two halves to that equation. The person who currently owns the project, of course, needs to do a thorough and transparent transfer, but the person taking on the project can't assume that this person thinks of everything. Sometimes it requires both to collaborate, for this person to ask questions that this person maybe hadn't thought of, to engage, to explore, and it requires time. I
Yep.
I was in a situation where one of my employers a few years ago laid off 5 workers. They gave those workers 1 day to transfer all of their institutional knowledge to other people within the organization without any sense of the human element, um, recognizing, okay, you've just laid someone off. What is their incentive to thoroughly turn over? They have none. They have absolutely no incentive. In fact,
Mhm.
they have a bit of an emotional incentive to do the other. So then the people who they were turning the projects over had all the responsibility of asking the questions, asking for the documentation, asking, but they'd not gone through any training
Yeah.
and no care to help ensure that they understood what they needed to do. And of course, it resulted in a disaster. So 5 people walk out the door, the decades of institutional knowledge walks out the door,
Mhm.
and then you're left with some time bombs that are eventually going to
Yeah.
blow up on you when no one knew that each quarter we have to run this report. No one knew that each month this process has to be reinitiated for whatever reason. Um, so I do think that it's so easy to overlook the human requirement as you're describing it. Um, and it's a lot more serious than just taking somebody through a training class on active listening or a training class
Yeah.
on communication skills. It does require leadership. It requires more than anything else. It requires leadership. Leaders
Yeah.
who are aware of what needs to happen and sensitive to both the human and the tech element, um, and then willing to drive whatever process needs to be driven to make sure that both are addressed. And I imagine that's exactly the puzzle piece that you fit into is coming into an organization and helping bridge the gap between
Yeah.
humans and technology, and then reach a point where it's no longer a gap, where you have pulled the
Right.
two together. If I'm
Right.
understanding right.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And with our toolbox that we have developed or framework, we can work on several levels, doing the C-level alignment, train up the middle layer, give them the tools to navigate, right, the wilderness they have created. Um, And depending on, how deep the issue is, we can also come in with small, like one-on-one mentoring bits that we support with. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think where we're getting to, and that's what I see is that AI is showing the ugly underbelly of so many things,
Yeah.
of neglect on so many levels that we didn't even know was neglect.
With the downside potential being greater than ever because AI is advancing so rapidly and has the potential. It does have the potential to not to harm us, not to kill us, but it has potential to waste resources, waste time, and take us off in not great directions if we aren't thoughtful about how we implement it. So, Barbara, I imagine though that part of what helps you as a consultant is your German accent, because a German accent brings with it a sense of authority, a sense of we better pay
Oh,
attention.
really?
Oh yes, yes,
Oh,
we better pay
oh.
attention to what she has to say. Uh, so I can, not all of us, benefit from having that German accent, but um, I I can imagine that is part of the. I'm not saying you think this way. I'm saying part of the theater of managing a project is, of course, people's confidence in the project manager, people's confidence in the consultant, and you carry yourself with a bit of um, uh, I call it quiet Germanic confidence, which works really well for a lot of Americans. So there's that. Um,
Okay, well, I'm also pretty direct. So, I if it's not a good fit, I also turn sometimes things down where it's like, hey, I'm sorry. yeah, you can hire me and pay me a lot of money, but I'm really in the business of empower your organization.
Yeah.
I don't want to work with you for the next 20 years and keep on coming in as a fixer.
And the one thing that was clear to me in our pre-talk is you want to do work that matters, and you want to make permanent fixes, not
Yeah.
keep coming back again and again. So, Barbara, I want to be respectful of your time, and I want to thank you for this conversation, because I think you and I, if we had the energy, we probably could keep going for 2 or 3 more hours, because there are so many layers to this topic, and I think as I get smarter in this topical area, I'd like to potentially reach out to you and have another conversation like this, and we could decide in advance like what direction we want to go, or what specifics do we want to address, because I think going forward, if you look at leadership in 2030 and beyond, every leader is going to be a digital leader in one way or another. It's just, in fact, the term digital leadership will be, what's the term, an oxymoron.
Yeah.
Leadership is digital leadership, or will have to be. There will be no way to get away from that unless you're leading cows in a pasture somewhere. Even that may have some of its own digital component. Who knows? By the time we get to
I'm sure it will, because we need to be a little more mindful of resources and all that stuff. So yeah,
absolutely.
everything will be digitized, but we need to be in a position as people where we make smart choices and really see how is it going to impact the next generation down, right? So yeah.
And that the benefits of digital accrue broadly, not compress upwards to a small core of the technology elite. If we don't ensure that the benefits of technology accrue broadly across society, there will be revolution, might not be the right word, but there will be something will happen, because I think we're already seeing a lot of agitation related to technology, because it seems like it's making the wealthy very wealthy. We're creating we're creating a digital elite, and that can only go so far before there's a broad pushback. But that's a topic for another day. Unless you have something you wanted to say.
Oh, there's so much. We could go on about that for a long time. Maybe one more thing, because I'm stepping on a plane later this week to speak at the Global Peter Drucker Forum in Vienna, and this year's topic is the next era leadership. So that's going to be exciting to see what everyone has to say, and also, how do the theories of Peter Drucker and the amazing work that I highly respect, what is the next level for it, and how do we need to evolve? So I am co-facilitating a workshop around ecosystems, and maybe later this year we can have another conversation.
So the Nordic heritage in me hesitates to ask. However, I'm going to just go ahead and say that sounds like something we would love to hear about, coming up. So I'll make sure I circle back with you and schedule a time where we can have that kind of conversation. I think we would love to benefit from hearing more about that. So again, Barbara, thank you. I will include in the show notes the details regarding how to get a hold of you, how to reach out, the details about your background, and then we will go from there. So again, thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.